Most people assume Viking warmth came from endless fires and forests of firewood. That assumption collapses the moment you study where Vikings actually lived. Much of Scandinavia had limited timber, brutal winters, and long periods when gathering fuel was nearly impossible. If heat depended on burning wood alone, Viking society would not have lasted centuries. What kept them alive was not fire, but structure. They built homes that captured warmth, held it, reused it, and refused to let it escape. Once you understand this system, you begin to see modern houses as wildly inefficient machines that waste heat Vikings would never have thrown away. Why Viking survival depended on storing heat rather than creating it. Viking builders understood something modern heating systems often ignore. Air cannot hold heat for long, but mass can. Their homes were designed to absorb warmth from every possible source and store it inside heavy materials. Human bodies, cooking activity, animals, sunlight, and even the earth beneath the floor all contributed small amounts of heat. Individually, these sources seem insignificant, but combined and trapped correctly, they created stable indoor warmth without continuous fuel. You can apply this principle immediately by focusing on thermal mass in your own space. Stone floors, brick walls, clay plasters, even large containers of water placed where sunlight reaches them can store heat during the day and release it slowly at night. This is not theory. It's physics the Vikings relied on every single day. Let's talk about how Viking longhouses used earth itself as a heat reservoir. Most Viking homes, they were actually partially sunken into the ground, and this wasn't for defense or, aesthetics. See, soil maintains a stable temperature all year round, warmer than the winter air and cooler than the summer heat. By lowering floors and anchoring walls into earth, Vikings reduced temperature swings dramatically. To replicate this today, even modest earth contact helps. Berming soil against exterior walls, insulating foundations properly, or building semi-subterranean storage or living spaces can stabilize temperatures without burning fuel. This is especially effective in cold climates where ground temperature remains above freezing. Viking walls were built thick enough to silence the wind. There was a real purpose behind that sturdy construction. Viking walls were not just thin timber panels. Instead, they were layered systems made of wood frames packed tightly with turf, moss, clay, straw, and sometimes even animal hair. Turf walls in particular were, honestly, remarkable insulators. Grass roots trapped air while damp soil blocked wind entirely, making these walls surprisingly effective. The result was a wall that stopped heat loss while, still remaining breathable. Modern builders often seal homes too tightly, which ends up trapping moisture and causing rot. Vikings avoided this by allowing slow moisture movement while preventing air leakage. Homeowners today can actually apply this by prioritizing dense, breathable insulation and eliminating drafts, rather than just relying on high-output heaters. Even during those harsh northern winters, people found ways to capture sunlight. Viking longhouses were, carefully oriented. Their openings faced the low winter sun, which allowed light to strike the dark floors, hearthstones, and walls. These surfaces would absorb solar warmth and, pretty impressively, hold onto it long after sunset. So, a practical step today is identifying where winter sunlight enters your home and placing thermal mass there intentionally. Dark stone, brick, or even water-filled containers near south-facing windows can, measurably reduce heating needs. The Vikings treated sunlight as fuel. We should too. Why animals were part of the heating system, not just food storage. In many Viking settlements, livestock were housed in attached structures or beneath living spaces. The animals' body heat rose through wooden floors and thick walls, warming human living areas. This system worked continuously, especially at night when temperatures dropped. While, most people will not house animals indoors, the principle still remains valuable. Heat-producing activities should really be centralized and shared. Kitchens, compost systems, greenhouses, and mechanical rooms can actually be positioned to warm adjacent living spaces instead of just venting heat outdoors. Here's how Viking hearths charged stone instead of just heating the air. When Vikings used fire, they used it deliberately. Hearths were built low and wide, surrounded by stone. Fires burned hot and short, transferring energy into stone rather than filling the room with smoke and escaping heat. Once the fire died, the stone continued radiating warmth for hours. This approach is still superior to constant low fires. Masonry heaters, rocket mass heaters, or even stone benches near stoves apply the same principle. One controlled burn can outperform hours of inefficient heating. Why ceiling height and room size mattered more than people realize. Viking homes were compact. Ceilings were low, rooms were small, and unused volume was minimized. Warm air stayed where people lived and slept. There was no wasted space to heat. Applying this today means zoning living spaces, reducing ceiling height where possible, and, focusing warmth where it is really needed. Curtains, room dividers, and sleeping lofts all help keep heat concentrated instead of diluted. Why controlled ventilation kept homes warm without suffocating occupants. Despite their insulation, Viking homes were never sealed completely. Smoke holes and controlled airflow allowed moisture and stale air to escape slowly without stripping warmth. Warm air exited at the highest point while fresh air entered low, creating gentle circulation. Modern homes often fail here by overventilating or sealing improperly. Passive ventilation systems that move air slowly preserve warmth while maintaining air quality, exactly as Viking builders intended. Why Viking heating knowledge still matters today. Vikings did not survive harsh winters by burning more fuel. They survived by refusing to waste heat. Their homes were machines of conservation, built with materials that worked with nature rather than against it. In an age of rising energy costs and fragile systems, this knowledge is not ancient trivia. It is practical resilience. If this kind of grounded, field-tested wisdom matters to you, subscribe to Backyard Wisdom. Share this with someone who values self-reliance and help keep these lessons alive. The past still teaches those willing to listen.